What is going on, everyone? Samcaster Mage of Samcaster MTG here, and I'm going to be doing a quick Pioneer League with this new Soulution deck. This is the Pioneer Soulution, obviously not the Soulution to the format. It's a pretty janky deck, but it is a lot of fun. So what I'll just do is I'll quickly walk through the deck tech with you guys, take you through the main board and the sideboard, and then we'll jump into a league and see how many games we lose. So starting off with our 1-drops, really we've got the whole kind of style of this deck is this Soulflayer deck. For those of you that don't know, Soulflayer is a 6-drop 4/4 with Delve that whatever creatures it exiles, whatever keywords are pretty much on it, it pretty much gets those abilities. Now, it doesn't get some new ones like Menace, as it is an older card, but it does pretty much get all the good stuff. So stuff from Flying, Death Touch, Hexproof, Lifelink, Trample, Vigilance, Double Strike, Indestructible, all the good keywords that you want to see on your creatures, it can pretty much get. So starting off with our 1-drops, we've got Merfolk, Secret Keeper, Stitcher Supplier. Both of those are able to mill our library into our graveyard, hopefully try to get some of those creatures with nice keywords right in the yard that we can then start exiling with Soulflayer and get a pretty quick 4/4 that's going to start trying to take over the game pretty much. Finishing off our 1-drops, we've also got Traverse the Ovenwald. So this is a sorcery, but if we have Delirium, it can search for a creature or land, so it can help us find the Soulflayer if it's a little bit in the later game. So in terms of different card types, we've got lands, we've got creatures, sorceries, we have instants and Grizzly Salvage. We also have enchantments as Chromanticore. Chromanticore is the only main board enchantment, but it does help us get Delirium pretty quickly, which is good. And it has lots of keywords like Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. Next on our 2-drops, we've got Satyr Wayfinder. So this is also another good way just to get some good cards in the bin. Following that up, we've also got Fiend Artisan. Now this is a new one for those of you that don't know. This is from Ikoria, and this is a 2-drop for hybrid black-green that gets +1/+1 for each creature card in our graveyard. Now in this deck we run 34 creature cards. That's more than half our deck. We can pretty much make this pretty sizey. I've had games where this has been an easy 7/7, 11/11. The biggest I've seen so far is 21/21, which is absolutely absurd. It also has a secondary function which works kind of like a birthing pod, where we can pay 1 mana and then X and sacrifice another creature to search our library for another creature with converted mana cost equal to X. So this deck, it only runs 18 lands, but even if we just have 3 mana, and let's say we sack a Stitcher Supplier, we can get a death trigger off that. We can then find a Lotless Troll, which is one of our other 2-drops, that can then discard some of these big guys from our hand to get them in the graveyard, and then we can start exiling them with Soulflayer. So it is a very good all-around card from the new set that I've been testing out and have been really enjoying it. It's a really nice backup plan. We've also got Grizzly Salvage. Grizzly Salvage is just a 2-mana instant that we can look at the top 5 cards of our library. Then we can pick a creature or land. So it does help us find Soulflayer. Also helps us get some necessary lands if we need the extra double black mana to help us cast that. Next, into our creatures, we've got 2 Murderous Riders. This gives us Lifelink, which is pretty sweet. It is also works as a pretty efficient removal spell for creatures and planeswalkers. On our 4-drops, we have Rankle, Master of Pranks, which gives us Flying Haste. It's a 3/3 for 4. But when it deals combat damage to another player, we can pretty much put up to 3 triggers on the stack. So we can make it so each player discards a card, so we can discard our Sammets, our Chromanticores, our Zetalpas, which are huge. Can make it so each player sacrifices a creature, so especially our early Secret Keepers or Satyr Wayfinders or Stitcher Suppliers are things that we don't really care about. We can easily sack that to the Rankle's ability and then hopefully remove one of our opponent's key creatures that they care a little bit more about. Next up, we've got Nightveil Predator, which is pretty sweet. It gives Flying, Death Touch, and Hexproof for 3 mana. Now, this is a threat. We are in Sultai colors that we can actually cast fairly reasonably, but also giving Death Touch with other creatures that are giving either first strike or double strike is just a huge boost to the Soulflayer. Next up in our 5-drop slot, we have Samit, Voice of Dissent. So this will give double strike, vigilance, and haste to Soulflayer. It does not give flash, but that's okay. We can't cast Soulflayer with flash anyways. But just being a hasty double strike, vigilance is a really solid threat if we can exile that with Soulflayer. Next up, we have Chromanticore, which I mentioned earlier. It gives flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, lifelink. Now, these two cards, as well as the Talpa, I'm not really able to cast in this deck. At least with the mana base as it currently is. You could run some Mana Confluence to help with that, but this one's just a little bit easier on not taking so much life, especially at 18 lands. If your Mana Confluence is your only first land or first 2 lands, you can really take a lot of damage over the course of the game, which we can gain a lot of it back if we get some lifelink triggers, but we really only have 5 sources of lifelink, which is the 2 Murderous Rider and the 3 Chromanticore. Next up, we have Zetalpa, which is just the big bad goose. It is the Flying Dinosaur. It gives flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, indestructible. It is absolutely huge. If we get even just that on a Soulflayer, it can usually pretty much take over the game, which is absolutely amazing. Finally, we have our sideboard. So we've got 2 Mystical Disputes. So those are against, so if we got some Banned Spirits, some control decks, this new Garuda Companion combo. It's pretty good against that. Same as Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is also pretty good against combo decks. Next we have Leyline of the Void. Against other graveyard decks, especially Sultai Delirium decks, Leyline's pretty good. Having 2 of those is pretty sweet. Since we are in fact a graveyard deck ourselves, we want to run Reclamation Sage. You could probably just run 3 in the sideboard, but I do like having 4. Being able to tutor it up out of the Fiend Artisan is really sweet, or fighting off the Grizzly Salvage. And we don't want to have too little of them, especially if our opponent is potentially packing stuff like Rest in Peace or their own Leyline of the Voids. It can be pretty good. Our Assassin's Trophies are pretty much our catch-all, and then we've got Damping Spheres, which is of course good against Lotus Breach decks or some potential other combo decks. So yeah, without further ado, that's pretty much the deck. Let's see about hopping into League. Now again, this deck is fun. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you this is obviously the best deck in Pioneer, because it's not. There is, there's a lot of times where the deck just doesn't go off, but when it does, it is an absolute blast to play. Actually, I run it fairly consistently. I'm usually getting about 3 1s, sometimes 4 2s, or sorry, 3 2s or 4 1s. But it is lots of fun. It is just a good fun deck. And if you're looking for something different to play that's pretty budget, I definitely recommend giving this a spin.